They made me sleep in the basement, so I silently bought their dream house and built my art studio. My name is Samantha Rodriguez, and at 27 years old, I never imagined I'd be treated like an unwanted guest in my own family home. Yet there I was, relegated to the unfinished basement while my parents proudly announced they had converted my childhood bedroom into a creative sanctuary for my younger brother Miguel. Their exact words still echo in my mind. "You can make do with the basement for now until you get your life sorted out." I didn't argue, didn't protest. I simply nodded and began quietly orchestrating something they never saw coming. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, overlooked despite your achievements, you'll want to see how this story unfolds. Let me know in the comments where you're from, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever been treated like your dreams don't matter. Before everything crumbled, I had been the responsible daughter. After graduating summa cum laude with a master's in fine arts from NYU, specializing in digital media and gallery curation, I found myself caught in the harsh reality of the art world during an economic downturn. Gallery closures and budget cuts swept through the industry like wildfire, leaving even experienced curators scrambling for positions. My carefully planned career trajectory, starting at a prestigious gallery in Manhattan, evaporated as institutions froze hiring and downsized their staffs. Like many graduates facing an uncertain market, I reluctantly returned to my family home in Westchester County, New York. The plan was temporary: save money, network within the local art scene, and secure a position that would allow me to move back to the city. Initially, my parents seemed supportive of this arrangement. Mom would pack lunches for my networking events, and Dad offered to review my portfolio presentations. Our colonial-style home, while spacious, had always been a place of warmth and creativity. My childhood bedroom remained exactly as I'd left it 4 years earlier, walls adorned with my early paintings, shelves displaying art books and small sculptures I'd collected, my easel still positioned by the window to catch the morning light. This room had been my sanctuary, where I'd first discovered my passion for visual storytelling and spent countless hours perfecting techniques that would later earn me recognition in graduate school. Miguel, 3 years younger than me, was in his final year at a prestigious private high school when I moved back home. We'd always had a close relationship despite our different artistic mediums. Where I gravitated toward visual arts, he excelled in music production and sound design. He would often burst into my room during college breaks, sprawling across my bed to share stories about his latest musical projects or ask for advice about art school applications. "Samantha, do you think I should apply to Berkeley or focus on traditional universities with strong music programs?" he asked one evening, adjusting his expensive headphones while I worked on grant applications at my desk. "With your talent and the connections you're building, you have options," I assured him, genuinely believing my brother had a bright future ahead. His musical abilities were undeniable, and his social media presence showcasing his productions had gained significant attention. Those first few months at home, I established a productive routine. Mornings were dedicated to applications and portfolio refinements. Afternoons often involved freelance graphic design work to contribute financially to the household. I cooked dinner twice a week, handled the grocery shopping, and even helped Dad install new lighting in his home office. Beyond household contributions, I paid $400 monthly toward utilities and expenses from my freelance earnings, determined not to burden my family. The first signs of trouble emerged subtly during family dinners. One evening, Mom announced that Miguel had been selected for an exclusive summer intensive at a renowned music production studio. "This opportunity will be transformative for his college applications," she beamed, serving an extra portion of her famous paella onto Miguel's plate. "The industry connections alone are worth the investment." "Samantha had excellent internships too," Dad mentioned, almost defensively. Mom waved dismissively. "Different times, different industry. The art world is so much more competitive now. Miguel is positioning himself in a field with actual career prospects." I caught Miguel's apologetic glance, but simply smiled and redirected the conversation. Creating family tension over casual remarks seemed counterproductive, especially since I'd just received a promising lead about an assistant curator position at the Hudson Valley Museum of Contemporary Art. "I have a second interview next Friday, I announced, hoping to shift focus to my own professional developments. That's nice, dear, Mom said, immediately turning back to Miguel. Now tell us more about this studio intensive. Will you be working with Grammy-winning producers? I absorbed the dismissal and concentrated on preparing for my interview. The position at Hudson Valley seemed ideal, combining my expertise in digital media with contemporary art curation. The museum's director, Dr. Sarah Chin, had been impressed with my thesis project on the intersection of technology and traditional artistic mediums. During our second interview, Dr. Sarah walked me through the museum's upcoming digital exhibition space. We need someone who understands both curatorial theory and practical implementation of interactive displays, she explained. Your background in digital media combined with your traditional fine arts training makes you uniquely qualified. Driving home that afternoon, I allowed myself to feel genuine optimism. The salary would enable me to secure my own apartment, possibly with enough space for a small studio where I could pursue my own artistic practice alongside my curatorial career. That evening, I decided to celebrate with a special dinner. My grandmother's recipe for chiles rellenos, a complex dish that required hours of preparation but was everyone's favorite. As I carefully roasted the poblano peppers and prepared the filling, I felt grateful for this moment of family unity, unaware that within 48 hours, everything would change irrevocably. Dad opened a bottle of wine during dinner, and even Miguel seemed genuinely interested in hearing about the museum's innovative approach to digital art curation. For a few precious hours, I felt valued as an equal family member rather than the unemployed daughter occupying space in her childhood bedroom. To Samantha, Dad raised his glass, soon to be the newest curator at Hudson Valley Museum. I smiled, cherishing what I now realize was our last normal family moment. Had I known what was coming, I might have memorized the warmth in their eyes, the sound of Miguel's laughter as he teased me about becoming too sophisticated for family dinners. Instead, I went to bed that night filled with hope, believing my temporary return home was finally concluding successfully. The next morning, I left early for a professional development workshop in the city, networking with other emerging curators and learning about grant opportunities for innovative exhibitions. I had no idea that while I was discussing the future of digital art installations, my parents were making a decision that would fundamentally alter our family dynamic. 2 days after my promising second interview, I returned home from a follow-up meeting with a local gallery owner who had offered to mentor me through the transition into full-time curatorial work. The house felt unusually quiet as I pulled into our circular driveway, noting both my parents' cars were present despite the early afternoon hour. Entering through the front door as usual, I called out a greeting but received no response. Assuming everyone was in the backyard or taking afternoon naps, I headed upstairs to change before starting dinner preparations. The sight that greeted me at the top of the staircase stopped me completely. My belongings, boxes of art supplies, portfolio cases, framed pieces, books on art history and curation, had been haphazardly stacked in the narrow hallway. My initial reaction was panic. Had we been burglarized? But nothing appeared missing, just displaced. Heart pounding, I rushed to my bedroom door and pushed it open. The transformation was jarring and complete. My twin bed had been replaced with Miguel's sophisticated setup, a king-sized bed, multiple monitors for his music production, professional-grade speakers, and recording equipment. The walls, previously adorned with my carefully curated collection of prints and my own paintings, now displayed concert posters and sound-dampening panels. Where my easel had stood by the window, capturing perfect morning light, now sat Miguel's mixing console with its array of electronic equipment. It was as if 27 years of my existence in this space had been erased overnight. "Oh, good, you're home," my mother said casually, appearing behind me with a laundry basket. "We moved your things to make room for Miguel's equipment. He needs the space for his college portfolio recordings." I turned slowly, struggling to process her words. "You moved me out? Without discussing it with me?" "Well, you were out all day," she replied, as if that justified everything. "Besides, you're barely here anyway with all your gallery visits and networking events. Miguel needs a proper studio space for his applications." "Where am I supposed to sleep?" My voice sounded strange, distant. "The basement has that fold-out couch. Dad said, emerging from what was now Miguel's room. We cleared out some storage space down there. It's actually quite cozy once you get used to it. The casual cruelty of their words hit me like physical blows. The basement, a space we'd always used for storage, with concrete floors, minimal lighting, and a persistent musty smell despite our best efforts to address the moisture issues. Until you figure your situation out and get your own place, Mom added, as if my unemployment was a personal character flaw rather than the result of industry-wide challenges affecting thousands of arts professionals. Miguel appeared in the doorway, running his hand through his hair with obvious discomfort. I didn't know they were doing this today, he said quietly. I thought they were going to talk to you first. I contribute to this household, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. I pay rent, I cook, I clean, I help with maintenance. And we appreciate that, Samantha, Mom said with the dismissive tone one might use with a helpful neighbor. But Miguel is at a crucial point in his development. His needs take priority right now. This is his senior year, and these portfolio recordings could determine his entire future. I stood there, surrounded by the scattered pieces of my life, trying to formulate a response that would make them understand the magnitude of what they had done. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, a strange calm settled over me, a detachment that felt like observing this happen to someone else entirely. I see, was all I managed to say. Don't make this into a bigger deal than it is, Dad said, his tone indicating the matter was closed for discussion. Family supports each other. Right now, Miguel needs support. You're resilient. You can handle a temporary adjustment. That night, I descended into the basement carrying the few personal items I'd managed to gather. The fold-out couch, which I remembered being uncomfortable even for occasional guests, would now be my bed indefinitely. The basement ceiling was low enough that I had to duck slightly when walking near the support beams. The concrete floor, even with the thin area rug my parents had provided, radiated cold that seeped through any covering. I unfolded the couch and discovered the mattress was thin and lumpy, with springs that protruded uncomfortably. The basement had no natural light, only harsh fluorescent fixtures that hummed constantly. The walls were unpainted concrete blocks, and despite my parents' claims about clearing storage space, boxes of holiday decorations and old furniture still crowded most of the area. Sleep was impossible. Every sound from upstairs, footsteps, conversations, Miguel's music production work, echoed through the floor above me. The heating system's mechanical noises amplified in the enclosed space, and the subtle but persistent smell of dampness made breathing uncomfortable. Around midnight, I heard laughter from Miguel's new room, my former room, as he video chatted with friends about his upgraded setup. The sound drifted down through the heating vents like a taunt. Morning brought no relief. I woke before sunrise with a stiff neck and aching back, the fold-out couch having provided no real support during the night. I quickly folded it back to its disguised position before anyone came downstairs, understanding intuitively that my sleeping arrangement should remain invisible during family hours. From the kitchen window, I watched my parents enter Miguel's room with measuring tape and color swatches. They were planning further improvements to cement his claim to the space. We're thinking about installing better soundproofing, Mom told me when she came down for coffee, as if I might be interested in optimizing my former sanctuary for my brother's use. Miguel thinks it will help him focus on his compositions. I nodded mechanically, stirring my coffee while absorbing this additional insult. They weren't just taking my space, they were improving it for him in ways they'd never considered when it was mine. Will you be home for dinner? Mom asked, already turning away. Yes, I replied, knowing my presence at family meals was expected even as my presence in a bedroom was deemed unnecessary. That evening, I sat through dinner listening to excited discussions about Miguel's room transformation. No one asked about my job search, the follow-up interview I'd had, or how I'd slept in the basement. I had become invisible while still physically present, a ghost haunting the periphery of my own family. Later, as I unfolded the couch again in the basement, resolve began forming within me. This situation was not just uncomfortable, it was unsustainable and deeply disrespectful. But arguing or pleading would only cast me as the difficult, ungrateful daughter. I needed a different approach entirely. As I lay awake on the lumpy mattress, staring at the concrete ceiling, the first seeds of a plan began to take root. The next 3 weeks became an exercise in systematic humiliation that extended far beyond the physical discomfort of my basement exile. Each night on the fold-out couch grew more unbearable as a persistent ache developed in my lower back, radiating down my legs by morning. The dampness in the basement aggravated a respiratory sensitivity I developed, leaving me with a persistent cough that no one in my family seemed to notice or care about. My productivity suffered dramatically as fatigue became my constant companion. Still, I maintained the appearance of acceptance, saying nothing as the situation deteriorated further with each passing day. Mom began making demands about my few remaining possessions scattered throughout the house. "Could you keep your art supplies in a single container?" she asked one morning. "Miguel needs more storage space for his equipment cases." I complied silently, consolidating my professional materials, brushes, paints, drawing tablets, reference books, into one large plastic storage bin that I kept in the basement corner. My supplies, accumulated over years of serious artistic practice, now resembled the contents of a child's toy chest. When I asked about using a small portion of the garage for a temporary workspace, Dad shook his head. "We need that space accessible for the cars and lawn equipment," he said, though the garage had always housed both cars and my mother's pottery wheel without issue. The physical discomfort was matched by growing emotional isolation. Family conversations continued around me rather than including me. Dinners became performances where I played the role of silent observer while Miguel's achievements dominated every discussion. "The music teacher thinks Miguel should apply to Juilliard," Mom announced one evening with pride that never colored her voice when discussing my artistic pursuits. "His compositions are apparently at a professional level already." When I mentioned a positive response from a gallery curator interested in my digital art installations, my parents nodded distractedly before immediately returning to Miguel's latest accomplishment. Miguel's attitude toward me shifted as well, evolving from apologetic discomfort to casual entitlement. He began treating the house as his personal studio, playing music at high volumes during hours when I needed to make professional phone calls. When I asked him to lower the volume during an important call with a potential employer, he rolled his eyes. "Can't you take it outside? I'm working on something important for my portfolio." The basement had no cell phone reception, forcing me to take all professional calls either outside or in the kitchen where family activities created constant background noise. I missed one promising opportunity entirely when a gallery director called during Miguel's practice session and couldn't hear me over the music. One afternoon, I returned from a portfolio review to find Miguel's friends sprawled throughout the main floor, their loud conversation making it impossible to work on applications. My former bedroom, now his studio, thumped with bass lines that made the walls vibrate. "Oh, this is my sister," Miguel told his friends when I walked through. "She's like, figuring things out right now." The exchange of glances and barely suppressed smirks felt like public humiliation. "So, you really sleep in the basement?" asked one of his friends, a lanky boy with expensive headphones around his neck. "It's temporary," I replied with dignity I didn't feel. "Yeah, until she gets her life together," Miguel added, the cruel echo of our parents' words cutting deeper coming from him. Despite my displacement, my parents' expectations for my contributions remained unchanged. I still cooked dinner twice weekly, handled household cleaning, and contributed financially from my rapidly dwindling savings. The inequality of the arrangement grew more stark with each passing day. "Samantha, did you forget to clean the guest bathroom?" Mom asked one morning as I prepared for a video interview with a museum in Connecticut. "I cleaned it yesterday," I replied, adjusting my only professional blouse that wasn't wrinkled from living out of storage bins. "Well, it needs doing again. Miguel's study group is coming over, and they might need to use it." I missed the first 10 minutes of my interview scrubbing a bathroom that was already clean, all for the comfort of my brother's friends who treated our home like their personal recording studio. The turning point came on a Tuesday morning when my phone buzzed with an email notification. Dr. Sarah Chun from Hudson Valley Museum had sent the message I'd been hoping for. "We would like to offer you the assistant curator position for digital media arts." Starting salary $58,000 annually with full benefits beginning after your 90-day review. Please respond at your earliest convenience to discuss start date and paperwork. A surge of elation washed through me, followed immediately by a strange sense of calm determination. This was my ticket out, but not in the way my family might expect. Ordinarily, this would be news to celebrate, an achievement to share with loved ones. Instead, I said nothing, slipping my phone back into my pocket as I continued preparing breakfast. Something had shifted within me during those weeks in the basement. The family that had dismissed my struggles and contributions didn't deserve to share in my triumph. That weekend brought extended family to dinner, my Aunt Carmen and Uncle David, along with my cousins. I had always been close with Aunt Carmen, who shared my artistic interests and had encouraged my museum career aspirations. "Samantha, how are you adjusting to being back home?" she asked warmly as we set the dining table. Before I could answer, Mom interjected with casual cruelty. "Oh, she's camping out in the basement for now." We converted her room into a proper studio space for Miguel's college applications. The shock on my aunt's face was immediately masked, but not before I caught it. "I see," she said carefully. "And where are you keeping your art supplies and workspace?" "Wherever they fit," I replied with a forced smile that didn't fool her. Throughout dinner, I felt Aunt Carmen's concerned glances. When the meal ended, she found me alone in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. "This isn't right, Samantha," she said quietly. "Your parents shouldn't be treating you this way." I shrugged, maintaining my facade of acceptance. "It's temporary. Still, you're their daughter, not some house guest they can stick in the basement. Do you need help with apartment hunting? I could co-sign a lease if that would help." Her kindness nearly broke my composure, but I managed to shake my head. "I'm working on a solution, but thank you. Promise me you'll call if you need anything," she said, squeezing my hand. "This situation isn't normal or acceptable." Later that evening, I overheard a conversation from my parents' bedroom that crystallized everything. The door was slightly ajar as I passed carrying laundry to the basement. "Carmen seemed upset about Samantha's living situation," Dad was saying. "Carmen doesn't understand the full picture," Mom replied dismissively. "Samantha needs motivation to get her life on track. Sometimes tough love is necessary." "Maybe we were a bit harsh," Dad admitted, moving her to the basement without discussion. "She's 27 years old," Mom interrupted. "When we were her age, we had careers, a house, we're planning our family. She's stuck because she chose an impractical field and now expects us to subsidize her poor decisions indefinitely." "The art market is tough right now," Dad said weakly. "Which is exactly why Miguel needs every advantage we can give him. He's choosing a practical creative field with real earning potential. Samantha's pursuing fantasy careers that don't pay bills." I stepped silently away from the door, their words echoing in my mind. In their narrative, I wasn't an educated professional facing industry challenges. I was a failure whose dreams were worthless fantasies. That night, lying on the uncomfortable couch in the damp basement, something fundamental shifted within me. The hurt transformed into cold resolve. I would not continue subjecting myself to this treatment, but neither would I give them the satisfaction of a dramatic exit or emotional confrontation. Instead, I would execute a plan so perfectly orchestrated that they would never forget the daughter they had so carelessly dismissed. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I woke up before everyone else and spent an hour online, not job searching, but house hunting. Specifically, I was looking for properties in our immediate neighborhood. What I found made me smile for the first time in a month. 3 houses down from my parents, a beautiful Victorian home had been on the market for 6 months. The elderly owner had moved to assisted living, and her family was motivated to sell. The house was larger than my parents', with a wraparound porch, original hardwood floors, and most importantly for my purposes, a detached carriage house in the backyard that would make the perfect art studio. The price had been reduced twice due to the length of time on the market and some needed updating. But with my new job offer, excellent credit, and the inheritance from my grandmother that my parents didn't know about, I was in a position to make a competitive offer. I contacted the listing agent immediately. "I'd like to schedule a viewing for this afternoon," I told her. I'm very interested in moving quickly on this property. While my family remained oblivious to my transformation, sleeping peacefully in their comfortable beds above the basement where they'd banished me, I began orchestrating the most elegant form of justice I could imagine. By noon that day, I had toured the house and fallen in love. The Victorian had character and charm that my parents' more modern colonial lacked. The main house featured 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, a formal dining room, and a spacious kitchen with original butler's pantry. But it was the carriage house that sealed my decision, a 2-story structure with massive windows, perfect for an art studio and gallery space. The carriage house has electricity and plumbing, the realtor, Patricia, explained as we toured the space. The previous owner's daughter used it as a pottery studio. With some renovation, it could be spectacular. I stood in the main room of the carriage house, imagining easels positioned to catch different qualities of light throughout the day, walls lined with my artwork, perhaps even space to host small exhibitions. This wasn't just a home, it was the creative sanctuary I'd always dreamed of. "I want to make an offer," I told Patricia without hesitation. 3 days later, my offer was accepted. The sellers were thrilled to have a buyer who appreciated the property's artistic potential and could close quickly. With my new employment contract, excellent credit score, and down payment ready, the financing moved smoothly through approval. I signed the purchase documents during my lunch break on Friday, exactly 2 weeks after receiving the job offer I still hadn't mentioned to my family. As I held the keys to my new home, I felt a satisfaction deeper than any professional achievement had ever provided. The closing wouldn't happen for another 3 weeks, giving me time to plan the renovations and, more importantly, to orchestrate the perfect timing for my departure from the basement. That weekend, I began working at Hudson Valley Museum, telling my family I was helping a friend with a project when they asked about my weekend absence. My first days on the job exceeded all expectations. Dr. Chen introduced me to the team as our new digital media specialist, who's going to revolutionize how we present contemporary art. The work was engaging and fulfilling in ways I'd missed during my months of unemployment. I was designing interactive installations, curating digital exhibitions, and working with artists whose work I'd studied in graduate school. My colleagues welcomed me warmly, impressed by my technical skills and curatorial vision. "Your background in both traditional and digital media is exactly what we needed," Dr. Chen told me after my first week. "You understand how to bridge those worlds in ways that make art accessible without dumbing it down." For the first time in months, I felt valued and respected. The contrast between my professional treatment and my family situation could not have been starker. I opened a separate bank account for my museum salary, ensuring my parents had no knowledge of my improved financial situation. When Dad asked about my weekend activities, I would vaguely mention networking or following up on opportunities, never revealing that I was not only employed but excelling in my dream job. Meanwhile, I coordinated renovations on the Victorian house with military precision. I hired contractors who specialized in historic restoration to update the kitchen and bathrooms while preserving the home's character. The carriage house required more extensive work: new flooring, updated electrical for my digital art equipment, and climate control systems to protect artwork. "This is going to be an incredible space," Marcus, my general contractor, said as we planned the carriage house renovation. "Are you planning to open it to the public?" "Eventually," I replied, imagining hosting art shows and community events in the space. I want it to be both a working studio and a place where people can experience art. Each day after work, I would stop by the house to check progress and make decisions about fixtures, paint colors, and flooring. The transformation was remarkable. The kitchen took shape with restored original cabinets painted in deep sage green, complemented by marble countertops and modern appliances. The bathrooms received updates that honored the Victorian era while adding contemporary functionality. Throughout this process, I maintained my quiet routine at my parents' house. I continued sleeping in the basement, contributing financially, and handling household responsibilities as expected. If my parents noticed my improved mood or occasional contractor dust on my clothes, they never mentioned it. Their focus remained firmly on Miguel's senior year activities and college applications. Miguel got early admission to 3 programs: Mom announced one evening as we cleared dinner dishes, including that prestigious summer program at Berkeley's Music Technology department. That's wonderful, I replied neutrally, remembering how she dismissed my own acceptance to competitive programs. We're so proud, Dad added. His portfolio submissions were apparently exceptional. The admissions counselor said they rarely see such sophisticated work from high school students. I nodded appropriately while internally planning the reveal that would put their priorities in perspective. By the 6th week of renovations, my new home was nearing completion. The interior restored to Victorian elegance while incorporating modern conveniences. The carriage house had been transformed into a stunning artist's studio with floor-to-ceiling windows, polished concrete floors, and a mezzanine level perfect for displaying larger pieces. It was time to plan my exit. The timing aligned perfectly with Miguel's 18th birthday party, which my parents had been planning for weeks. They'd invited extended family, his friends, and several music industry contacts who might be valuable for his college applications. The party would be held on a Saturday afternoon in our backyard, with catering and a small stage for Miguel to showcase his latest compositions. I volunteered to help with party preparations, offering to handle the floral arrangements and decorative details, a task that would require me to be out of the house Friday evening and early Saturday morning for setup. In reality, I would be moving my belongings to my new home. The night before Miguel's party, I carefully packed my few remaining possessions in the basement. Art supplies, clothes, personal items, everything fit into 3 suitcases and several boxes. The accumulated belongings of my 27 years had been reduced to what could fit in my car's trunk and back seat. At 5 a.m. Saturday morning, I quietly loaded my car and wrote a simple note, leaving it on the kitchen counter. Found my own place. Won't be needing the basement anymore. Enjoy the party. No forwarding address, no explanation, no emotional appeals. Just a statement that mirrored the casual dismissiveness with which they'd treated me. As I drove away from my parents' house for the last time, I felt not anger but relief. The humiliation was ending on my terms. I spent Saturday morning arranging my belongings in my new home, finally able to unpack properly for the first time in 2 months. My art supplies found homes in the carriage house studio, my clothes hung in spacious closets, and my books lined built-in shelves in the Victorians' library room. Around noon, I heard cars arriving at my parents' house for Miguel's party. Through my dining room window, I could see guests gathering in their backyard, setting up the celebration that I would no longer be expected to attend. My phone began buzzing with notifications around 1 p.m. I deliberately ignored them, focusing instead on arranging my new kitchen and enjoying the simple pleasure of space that was entirely mine. By evening, I had received 12 texts from Mom, 8 from Dad, and surprisingly, 3 from Miguel. Mom, 1:15 p.m. Where are your things? Call us immediately. Mom, 1:47 p.m. This is ridiculous. We need to talk about this. Mom, 2:23 p.m. You can't just disappear without discussion. Dad, 1:52 p.m. Found your note. Where did you go? This is childish. Dad, 2:45 p.m. We're worried about you. At least let us know you're safe. Dad, 3:31 p.m. Several guests asking where you are. This is embarrassing. Miguel, 4:15 p.m. Did you really move out? Where did you go? Miguel, 4:47 p.m. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Can you just call them? Miguel, 5:23 p.m. I feel bad about the room thing. I didn't know they were going to put you in the basement. I silenced my phone and spent the evening arranging my studio space, hanging my artwork on walls where it would never be displaced for someone else's convenience. Sunday morning brought the expected confrontation. I was arranging flowers in my new garden when I heard voices next door escalating in volume. Through the fence, I could hear my parents arguing about my departure, each blaming the other for driving me away. You were too harsh about the basement, Dad was saying. She needed motivation, Mom replied defensively. How was I supposed to know she'd run off like this? Around 10 a.m., they came looking for me. I watched from my upstairs window as they knocked on neighbors' doors, asking if anyone had seen me or knew where I'd gone. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were more concerned about my whereabouts now than they'd been about my well-being when I was sleeping on their basement couch. Mrs. Patterson from across the street pointed toward my house when they asked her. I watched my parents' faces as they slowly turned to look at the Victorian, processing what her gesture meant. The march to my front door was swift and determined. I let them knock twice before answering, opening the door but remaining in the threshold. "Samantha," Mom began, her eyes wide as she took in the glimpse of my furnished home. "What is this? When did you buy this house?" "Recently," I replied simply. "How is this possible?" Dad asked, his voice rising. "You've been unemployed for months. How could you afford this?" "I've been working at Hudson Valley Museum for 6 weeks," I explained calmly. "The job you never asked about because you were too focused on Miguel's portfolio." The revelation silenced them momentarily. 6 weeks of employment, of financial stability, of professional success, and they had never noticed because my achievements didn't fit their narrative of my failure. "You never told us you got a job," Mom protested. "You never asked," I countered. "Not once in 6 weeks did either of you express interest in my professional progress. You were too busy discussing Miguel's admissions prospects while I slept in your basement." Dad ran his hand through his hair, visibly struggling with the implications. "You could have said something instead of just disappearing. Like you said something before moving my belongings to the hallway and converting my room?" The question hung between us, unanswered. Behind them, I spotted Miguel approaching hesitantly from their house. He stopped at the bottom of my front steps, taking in the scene of his parents confronting me at my own front door. "Can we come in?" Mom asked, already moving forward as if my consent were automatic. I remained firmly in the doorway.
"No."
"This is my home, and I decide who enters. That privilege needs to be earned." The shock on their faces was profound. They had never imagined I would deny them anything, much less access to a space I controlled. Their assumption of entitlement to my life extended even to this moment of separation. "Samantha, we're family," Dad said, as if invoking the word negated all previous mistreatment. "Family doesn't make someone sleep in a basement when alternatives exist," I replied. "Family doesn't dismiss someone's career goals as impractical fantasies. Family doesn't measure worth by conventional success during industry downturns." A delivery truck rumbling up the street interrupted our confrontation. I had scheduled the arrival of my new furniture and art equipment for Monday morning, timing that would make my transformation undeniably visible to my parents. "What's being delivered?" Mom asked, craning her neck to see the truck. "Professional art equipment for my studio," I replied. "The carriage house is being converted into a working gallery space." "Already?" Dad asked incredulously. "You just moved in." "I've owned this house for 3 weeks," I corrected. "Today is just the first day you've noticed." The timeline revelation, 3 weeks of planning and preparation, happening literally 3 houses away while they remained oblivious, rendered them speechless. "We're having family dinner tonight," Mom finally said, regrouping. "You should come over so we can discuss this situation properly." "Thank you for the invitation, but I have work to do." I declined politely but firmly. "And contractors to supervise." "What contractors?" Dad asked, his concern growing as he realized the scope of changes happening without his knowledge. "The ones converting the carriage house into a professional art studio and gallery space," I replied. "You'll probably hear some noise over the next few weeks as we install the kiln and expand the electrical systems." I closed the door gently but decisively, leaving them standing on my porch. Through the front window, I watched them confer among themselves, gesturing animatedly before reluctantly returning to their house. Only Miguel glanced back, his expression unreadable. Over the next 2 weeks, my transformation became impossible to ignore. The delivery trucks were constant: furniture, art supplies, professional photography equipment for documenting my work, and most prominently, the industrial kiln for ceramic work that required a crane to position in the carriage house. My parents made several attempts to reconnect, each revealing their continued failure to understand the fundamental issues that had driven me away. Mom appeared at my door with homemade empanadas, offering them as a housewarming gift, as if I were a new neighbor rather than her daughter. Dad volunteered to help with renovation decisions, suggesting paint colors and fixture choices, as if my master's degree in fine arts meant nothing when it came to aesthetic decisions. Each overture carefully avoided acknowledging their treatment of me or offering genuine apology. I remained cordial but distant, accepting the empanadas with thanks, but not inviting further conversation. I declined Dad's offers of help with a simple, "I have professionals handling everything, but thank you." The confrontation I had anticipated came when the gallery lighting was installed in the carriage house. The professional track lighting system required electrical work that was visible from my parents' kitchen window, making my investment in the space undeniable. Mom appeared at my back door, which opened toward the carriage house construction. "This seems excessive," she said without preamble, gesturing toward the sophisticated lighting system being installed. "Are you trying to make some kind of statement?" I looked at her steadily. "I'm creating a professional workspace that reflects my education and career goals. Just as you did when you decided the basement was adequate accommodations for your daughter." "You're being dramatic about that," she dismissed. "It was temporary." "So is everything," I replied, "including relationships." She flinched at the implication. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm establishing boundaries. This house, this studio, they represent my independence and the respect I require moving forward. You and Dad taught me a valuable lesson about where I stand in the family hierarchy. I'm simply responding accordingly. By buying a house 3 doors down and building an art studio we can see from our kitchen? This feels spiteful, Samantha." "I prefer to think of it as instructive," I corrected. "Every time you look out your window, you'll remember the daughter who slept in your basement while having the capability to create all this. The daughter whose career achievements you dismissed as impractical fantasies. The daughter who will never again accept being treated as less than she deserves." For the first time, I saw something like understanding dawn in my mother's eyes, quickly followed by dismay. The narrative she had constructed about her struggling, directionless eldest daughter crumbled in the face of my evident success and determination. "We didn't know you were suffering," she said quietly. "You didn't want to know," I corrected her. "And that makes all the difference." As autumn arrived, my new life took shape with a clarity and purpose that surprised even me. My career at Hudson Valley Museum flourished as Dr. Chen assigned me increasingly significant responsibilities. I was curating my first solo exhibition, a groundbreaking show on digital art's impact on traditional museum spaces, scheduled to open in the spring. My home transformation continued, with each improvement reflecting both my personal taste and professional expertise. The carriage house neared completion as a state-of-the-art studio and gallery space, complete with professional lighting, climate control systems, and display areas that could accommodate both traditional and digital art installations. The neighbors reacted to my sudden transformation with varying degrees of curiosity and support. Mrs. Patterson from across the street brought homemade cookies with a card reading, "Congratulations on following your dreams." Mr. Chen, no relation to my boss, from next door, offered recommendations for local artisans and framers. "Bold move, buying so close to your parents," he commented while helping me direct the delivery of a large sculpture. "Most young people your age are trying to get away from family, not move closer." I smiled. Sometimes proximity creates the strongest boundaries. He laughed, not fully grasping the layers of my statement. "Well, it's good to have an artist on the street. Brings culture to the neighborhood." My relationship with my family evolved in unexpected ways following my dramatic departure. My parents cycled through predictable stages of reaction: initial shock and disbelief, followed by indignation, then awkward attempts at reconciliation, and finally a grudging respect tinged with embarrassment. Dad was the first to approach with something resembling genuine remorse. He appeared at my door one evening as I was installing exterior lighting for the carriage house gallery. "Need an extra pair of hands?" he offered, gesturing to the remaining fixtures. I hesitated, then nodded. "You can help steady the ladder." We worked in silence for several minutes before he spoke again. "The studio looks incredible. You've created something really special here." "Thank you." Another long pause. "I was wrong, Samantha. About a lot of things." I continued working on the light installation, neither accepting nor rejecting his implicit apology. "I never should have let your mother put you in the basement," he continued. "And I certainly shouldn't have suggested it was adequate. It was disrespectful and hurtful." I sat back, meeting his eyes directly. "Yes, it was. I got caught up in Miguel's college pressure and forgot that you had needs too. That was unfair." "It wasn't just unfair," I corrected him. "It was dehumanizing. You treated me like my worth was tied to employment status, like I was failing at life because of industry circumstances beyond my control." He winced at hearing his own words reflected back. "I was wrong," he repeated. "And I'm sorry." His apology was genuine but incomplete. He understood that his actions had hurt me, but not how deeply they had altered our relationship. Still, it was a beginning. Mom proved less capable of genuine introspection. Her attempts at reconciliation focused on minimizing what had happened rather than acknowledging its impact. "You're making too much of this, Samantha," she said during an uncomfortable encounter at the local farmer's market. "Families make sacrifices for each other all the time." "The problem wasn't the sacrifice," I explained, selecting apples with deliberate care. "It was the assumption that I deserved less dignity than Miguel. It was the message that my worth was conditional." She sighed impatiently. "Well, you've certainly made your point with that studio. The whole neighborhood is talking about it." "I didn't build it for the neighborhood," I replied, leaving her to draw her own conclusions. My success became increasingly difficult for my parents to ignore or dismiss. The local arts magazine featured my upcoming exhibition at Hudson Valley Museum, specifically highlighting my innovative approach to integrating digital media with traditional curatorial practices. My renovation choices attracted attention from architectural magazines, and the Carriage House studio was selected for a local historic preservation tour. Most visibly, I began hosting monthly artist gatherings in my studio, informal events where local artists could share work, collaborate, and network. These gatherings grew from small coffee meetings to significant cultural events that attracted artists from throughout the region. I deliberately scheduled the first major gathering for a Saturday evening in October, timing it to coincide with my parents' annual neighborhood barbecue. From their backyard, they could see the warm light spilling from my carriage house windows, hear the animated conversations about art and creativity, witness the community I had built around my passion. The most surprising development came from Miguel. Unlike our parents, he approached me with straightforward remorse that suggested genuine growth. "I was awful to you," he said bluntly, having appeared at my door one afternoon after school. "I let Mom and Dad treat you badly, and then I made it worse with my attitude. I'm really sorry, Sam." His directness caught me off guard. "Why are you apologizing now?" He shrugged, looking younger than his 18 years. "I've been thinking about college, about being on my own soon. And I realized I might end up in your situation someday, struggling not because I failed, but because creative careers are hard. I'd hope someone would show me more kindness than we showed you." His insight impressed me. "That's very perceptive." "I miss you," he admitted. "I feel terrible about taking your room. I should have refused when they offered it. You were 17. The adults should have known better. Still, I'm sorry." He hesitated. "Do you think we could try to be siblings again? Real ones. Not the version where I was a spoiled brat and you were treated like an inconvenience." His candor surprised a laugh from me. "That's a pretty accurate summary. So, can we start over?" I considered his request. Unlike our parents, Miguel showed genuine understanding of the hurt caused and sincere desire to repair our relationship. He was young, still forming his adult identity and values. "We can try," I agreed cautiously. "But I need you to understand something. I'm not the same person who left your house that morning. I've changed in fundamental ways." "I can see that." He gestured toward my home and studio. "You're kind of incredible now." This time my laugh was genuine. "Let's start with coffee next week." Small steps. Our parents continued their attempts at justification even as evidence of their misjudgment surrounded them. Dad would casually mention my lucky break at the museum, as if my success were chance rather than education and persistence. Mom occasionally referred to my extreme reaction in purchasing the house, refusing to acknowledge the symbolic power of my choice. Miguel thinks we should all have dinner together soon, Mom mentioned during a chance encounter as we both collected mail. A family reunion of sorts. I'm not ready for that, I replied honestly. My boundaries aren't negotiable right now. Boundaries, she repeated with a sigh. You never needed boundaries before. I always needed them, I corrected her. I just didn't know how to establish them until you and Dad taught me the consequences of not having them. As winter approached, I found myself growing increasingly comfortable with my new reality. The anger that had initially fueled my actions gradually transformed into something more sustainable, a quiet confidence in my own worth and capabilities. I no longer needed my parents' validation or approval. The realization was simultaneously liberating and somewhat sad, a necessary growing up that came later than it should have. My home became my sanctuary not just from my family's treatment, but from the lingering self-doubt their actions had instilled. Each room reflected choices made with intention and care. My career provided not just financial security, but creative fulfillment and professional respect. Even my carefully planned garden represented growth that I controlled and nurtured. The studio became less about sending a message to my parents and more about creating joy and community around my passion. On quiet evenings after work, I would paint in the beautiful natural light, feeling gratitude for my own resilience. These peaceful moments of creative flow were the true victory, far more meaningful than any reaction I'd provoked from my family. One Sunday afternoon in November, as I worked on a large canvas in my studio, I noticed Miguel walking hesitantly at my driveway. Our weekly coffee meetings had become a regular occurrence, gradually rebuilding a relationship based on mutual respect rather than family obligation. Mom and Dad are fighting again, he said without preamble. About you, about how they treated you. Dad says they were wrong. Mom says you're overreacting. It's getting worse. I continued painting, not looking up. That's not your problem to fix, Miguel. Or mine. I know, but I hate seeing what's happening to our family. I straightened, meeting his troubled gaze. The family was already broken when they decided I deserved less dignity than you. What you're seeing now is just the visible manifestation of problems that were already there. He nodded slowly. I get that now. I just wish they did too. They might, eventually, I said, surprising myself with the optimism. Growth isn't linear, and some people take longer than others. When did you get so wise? He asked with a small smile. Somewhere between the basement and the studio, I replied. 1 year after purchasing my house, I hosted a major exhibition opening in my carriage house gallery. The timing was deliberate, a celebration not just of my artistic development, but of my journey from that first night on the basement couch to complete transformation. My studio was now fully realized, each corner a testament to my vision and persistence. The gallery space showcased not only my own work, but pieces by other emerging artists I'd begun collecting and supporting. The main house gleamed with thoughtful renovations that honored its Victorian character while incorporating modern functionality. My guest list was carefully curated. Colleagues from Hudson Valley Museum, including Dr. Chen herself, fellow artists from throughout the region, neighbors who had supported my transition, Aunt Carmen and Uncle David, and after much consideration, Miguel. My parents received no invitation, a boundary that remained necessary for my peace of mind. As I arranged the final details for the opening reception, I caught sight of my reflection in the studio windows. The woman looking back bore little resemblance to the one who had once quietly folded a basement couch each morning to hide evidence of her diminished status. My posture was straighter, my expression more confident. The past year had reshaped me as thoroughly as I had reshaped this property. This place is amazing, Sam, Miguel said, arriving early to help with preparations. At 18, he had matured considerably, his formerly self-centered perspective broadened by our conversations and his own experiences with college applications and independence. Thanks. It feels like home now. He glanced toward our parents' house, visible through the studio windows. They know you're having an opening tonight. I expected they would notice. Mom wanted me to ask if they could come. I told her I wouldn't bring it up. I smiled appreciatively. Thanks for respecting that boundary. I've learned a lot from you this year, he admitted. About standing up for yourself, about not accepting less than you deserve. Those were expensive lessons for me to learn, I said, thinking of the emotional cost rather than the financial investment. I'm glad they came easier to you. The opening unfolded beautifully. Throughout the evening, guests moved between the house and studio, admiring both the art and the thoughtful restoration work. Dr. Chen gave an impromptu speech praising my professional accomplishments and announcing my promotion to senior curator for emerging media. Aunt Carmen embraced me with tears in her eyes, whispering how proud she was of my resilience. As the evening wound down and the last guest departed, I found myself alone in my studio, looking at the work displayed on the walls, pieces that represented not just artistic growth but personal transformation. Each painting, sculpture, and digital installation told part of the story of reclaiming my worth. Movement at the fence line caught my attention. My father stood in their backyard, watching the warm light from my studio windows. Our eyes met briefly across the distance before he raised his hand in a tentative wave. I returned the gesture with a small nod, neither inviting nor dismissing the connection. He lingered a moment longer before turning back toward their house, shoulders slightly slumped. The interaction, brief as it was, crystallized the year's most important lesson. True reconciliation could only happen when all parties acknowledged the reality of what had occurred. My parents remained caught in their own narrative, unable or unwilling to fully recognize the impact of their actions. Until that changed, our relationship would remain cordial but distant, like neighboring homeowners who exchanged pleasantries, but never truly connected. Later that evening, as I cleaned up from the opening, Miguel helped me stack chairs and collect empty glasses. I got into 3 colleges, he announced casually, including the music technology program at NYU. Miguel, that's fantastic. I gave him a genuine hug. I'm so proud of you. I was thinking, he continued hesitantly, that I might minor in arts administration. If that's not weird, since it's kind of your field. I smiled. It's not weird. You'd be great at it. Mom says it's too impractical, that I should focus solely on music production. The echo of familiar discouragement made me set down the glasses I was gathering and face him directly. Listen to me, Miguel. The only person who gets to decide what you're capable of is you. Not Mom, not Dad, not me. You. He nodded slowly, like you decided you were capable of all this. He gestured to encompass the studio, the house, my successful career. Exactly. The basement was never the end of my story. It wasn't even the most interesting part. After Miguel left, I walked through my quiet house, turning off lights and reflecting on the journey of the past year. The pain had been real and deep, but it had also been transformative. From the humiliation of sleeping in an unfinished basement, I had built not just a home, but a life defined entirely on my own terms. The lessons had come at a high cost, but their value was undeniable. True worth comes from within, not from others' validation. My parents' dismissal had felt like a definitive judgment on my value, but their assessment had been profoundly wrong. My worth existed independently of their recognition. Dignity is not negotiable. By treating the basement as adequate accommodation, my family had attempted to normalize disrespect. My departure and subsequent success represented a reclamation of basic human dignity. Actions speak louder than apologies. My parents' continued attempts at reconciliation without full acknowledgement revealed the limits of verbal remorse without behavioral change. Creating boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. The physical boundary of separate houses represented the emotional boundaries needed for healthy relationships. Most importantly, I'd learned that pain could be channeled into productive action rather than bitter resentment. The house, the studio, my career advancement, none of these were acts of revenge, but rather affirmations of self-worth. I hadn't built this life to hurt my parents, but to heal myself. As I prepared for bed in my beautifully designed master bedroom, I thought about that basement couch and the person I'd been when forced to sleep on it. That part of my life was over, but the lessons remained an integral part of who I had become. I no longer harbored anger toward my family, just a clear-eyed understanding of our new reality and the boundaries necessary to maintain my peace. The transformation extended far beyond the physical spaces I had renovated. The most significant renovation had been internal, reshaping my understanding of family, respect, and self-worth. From the humiliation of the basement had come the foundation of a life built on my own terms, with no apologies and no compromises on essential dignity. The studio lights cast gentle shadows on my bedroom ceiling as I drifted toward sleep, content in the knowledge that I had created this sanctuary through my own determination. Whatever relationship evolved with my parents in the future would be one of equals meeting across clearly defined boundaries, not a daughter desperately seeking approval from a basement floor. Have you ever had to create a boundary with family that seemed drastic but was necessary for your well-being? Comment below with your experiences. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of personal growth and transformation. Share this with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for their worth. Remember, sometimes the most painful experiences can lead to the most beautiful transformations if we have the courage to take that first step. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you deserve dignity and respect in every relationship in your life.